We are underway for the final race of the 23-24 cyclocross season, and yet again your boy gets an absolute flyer, gets clipped in, goes thermonuclear and gets the whole shot. I tell you what, if the race was to the first corner this year, I would have won this league. Unfortunately it's not though, and in a second I came into this corner way too hot, you can see, and I've come off that like nice fast line and I could see that I couldn't get back on it, and I think it was Boney and Oscar that came round me just there, didn't have the legs to hold them off as I swung wide and got that corner wrong. But this course was super fast and some punchy little climbs. You can see how dry it is for like a January race. It's absolute madness. And I made a little mistake here. I tried to put the power down too early, and you know when the back wheel just slides out from underneath you, then I had to rip it to shut down a gap, which was exactly what I didn't need. But I am gonna give you my excuses. I just felt like I was coming into this with a bit of fatigue. I'd probably done some stupid things in the week, trying to do 10k runs where I hadn't done any run training, and also coming in towards the end of the season you could just feel the fatigue building, and I was just tired and ready for the end of the cross season. But just here I could see gaps opening with Boney, and you cannot let that man go. He was on a mission today. He wanted that win. He wanted to wrap it up and get a good result for the final race, and he just put down the power and none of us could go with it. There's the honest answer. Spoiler alert, Mr. David Bone pulled away and made us all look very weak and powerless in a minute. But as I started to see the gap open up, I thought to myself, I've got to just bridge across and go with it. Look, that gap's too big already, especially when you've gone so hard off the start. You just can't afford to let that happen. You're doing like 700 watt spikes out of the corner, yet again over 500 watts, and I just can't afford to do them. And you can see here I've had to ease off the gas a little bit. I mean, we're going downhill anyway, but what you'd notice, the fast boys, the strong boys would have stayed on the gas there, and then yet again 700 watts, and I just wasn't closing the gap down. And as you're going this way, you were into a bit of a headwind. It wasn't too bad here. Over the other side on the start-finish straight, that was the start straight, sorry, that was a headwind. But you can see I'm almost closing the gap. I just didn't quite have the beans to get on his wheel, and he was just pressing on, and I was thinking to myself, I'm going too deep already. You know when you can feel you're not getting your heart rate up, your legs are screaming at you, and there's just absolutely nothing you can do. And just here is where the elastic snapped. This was the worst part of the course for me, this little climb up towards pits. It doesn't look like much, but it was brutal. You've just had the drag down towards it, and then when you get up towards the top it was really, really bumpy, and it's hard to put down the power when it's bumpy, and Boney just absolutely ripped it up there, and you can see that gap he's put into me now, and it was signed, sealed, delivered, dispatched. And when I came into this single track, he's a good mountain biker, I got this bit horribly wrong. I could not get this bit right. I had to put my foot out, do a truffle shuffle, get clipped back in, and I just couldn't get that corner right. There was a couple of routes on the corner that the camera doesn't pick up, and you come into it with such speed. The problem was the outside line I wanted to take, you couldn't get enough power out the other side of it because the mud was so thick. But you can see now, look, Boney is absolutely gone, and it was a devastating blow because I wanted to get my win, and you can see there I've made another mistake, slipped out on the routes, and as all the races have come through and we're the last race of the day, the routes were super exposed and slippery. But yeah, look, he's only pulling away now, and I was thinking to myself, all the berries have gone. The lad has got no more ponies. Georgie boy is a shell of a man, and this little climb up towards the finish was not fun. I was just thinking to myself, I'm probably going to go backwards now. My legs just felt hollow, and at this point here, about half a lap later, is when Oscar attacked me and just whacked it past, and I said to myself, I've got to go with it. But then I think Gino comes past as well, and spoiler alert, he ends up finishing second. But I was like, I've got to just jump on that, try and go with it. You can see the heart rates come back down, but I think that was just the fatigue where I couldn't get the heart rate up, where the legs weren't working. Then a little mistake there by Gino meant I had to then shut this gap down to Oscar. And he is really powerful along these straights. You can see even in the wheels, so God knows what power he's doing. He doesn't look like he's doing much when he's on the front, but he just sits down and absolutely mashes on the pedals. But you can see the difference. Look, I was trying to get past him on these twisty sections. He's not as fast on the corners, but when he starts putting the power down, strong boy. Look, he can hold off people. And that is something that I'm going to work on this year. And I'm going to take Oscar down next year because I'm going to be an absolute powerhouse. I'm going to be a brick house. I was going to say something else then, but this is a PG channel, and I'm taking this commentary. But this is when the elastic started to snap with these boys. Back on that climb past pits, I was just like, Del Boy was screaming at me, "You got to go with it. You've got to make it hurt now." And I was thinking, we're 12 minutes in, Del Boy, and I'm hurting more than I should be. I've got to survive another 50 odd minutes. This race was 1 hour 7, I think. Look, you can see how awkward that corner is, and everyone was just making mistakes. I was making mistakes, and it was this bit here when we got to the climb up towards the start finish. Those boys in front, Oscar and Gino, just absolutely ripped it, and I tried with absolutely everything I had to go with it. And when I got to the top here, I just had to ease off. I was in a world of hurt. I think this was the max heart rate for the race, 180, which is annoying because about 6 weeks ago when I was at Regional Champs and I had that really good race and finished like 10 seconds behind first place, I was getting up to like 189. I'm just nowhere near that now. I don't know if it's the fatigue. And this was the point where I started to go backwards. Nick came past me, and then he was on a mission to chase down and get that podium spot. And yet again, I'm trying to go with it. And I just didn't have the legs. And what didn't help is I lost my confidence on the hurdles practicing them before. So I ended up getting off, dismounting, running. And in previous races, I've managed to hop the hurdles at the Wessex League. They're a little bit lower, but for some reason they were awkward. There was like a little dimple just in front of them, but then Nick makes a mistake there into the tape. It does slow me down a bit, but I get back in front of him, and you can see the boys in front. They just start to stretch it out now, and they were absolutely gone. I tried to close that gap down on him, I couldn't. Then Nick come back past and he was back on a mission after he got caught in the tape and just sticking the hurt on me. And eventually, all these little surges he was putting in, I just couldn't go with it. And he does start to pull away, and you can see the wheels are falling off. Del Boy was on the left there. I don't know why you weren't in pits, Del Boy, but he said to me, he was like, at that point he was like, change bike, get on the other bike. They've got the Torino wets on. They're not quite as aggressive as the Challenge Lemurs, and I probably should have pitted, but I was worried that I was going to lose too many places, drop away, and then this is when it all went to absolute pot along here. Georgie boy gets this route horribly wrong. You can't park there. I've absolutely decked it, and then because we're in this muddy section, I've then had to run this whole section before I remounted. I probably could have remounted, but I wasn't sure on the traction I was going to get, and then that was that group gone. And my head completely went at this point. It normally doesn't, but I then lost another place here. I think Paul comes round me because he was hopping the hurdles, and it made such a difference being able to accelerate out. But I think in a second I do go back past him in a minute because he makes a mistake. But he saved my race. Him and Carl Norfolk saved my race. Look at the power he was putting down along here. Now I think he was on 38mm gravel tyres, he said, with slicks. And it's not often I say this, but yes, everyone always says you can't run muds. I know I can't unless you're going to pay for my wheels. I haven't got the budget at the moment, but these boys were absolutely pinging, and I was just hanging on for dear life. But this course required a slick tyre. I'm not going to lie, maybe next year I'll save up my pocket money and the Rocket might let me buy a new pair of wheels. Rocket, Not a chance, she said. She sat next to me. So there we go. We're going to be running muds again next year unless Del Boy pulls through. Come on, Del Boy! But yeah, I was clinging on to this group. So at the moment, this was the battle for fourth. And then Carl made a little attack. Paul then whacks it to shut it down. And I'm thinking, I've just got to jump on that, go with it. But I was hurting so much at this point. What are we? We're not even halfway into the race. And the boys are just absolutely pinging on the front. I think Carl was running muds, but this is where Paul makes the mistake. I go back past and I'm thinking to myself now that I need to shut the gap down to Carl before we get to the headwind stretch, the start straight, and I did manage to do it, and him and Paul pulled me back on to Nick's wheel. So absolute legends for that. And now we're back up. You can see we're back up on Nick's wheel. And this is now the battle for third place. The battle for the final podium spot and the last bit of money. And in all honesty, I thought there is no way in hell I'm going to be able to keep going with them. But I managed to get a little bit of recovery in. And I think it was just here. I felt the pace ease. The pace dropped down to like 100 watts. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to whack it and see who goes with it. So I whacked it into this section past pits. And I knew the next little section in a minute was probably the best part of the course for me because it was a little bit twistier, and I find I'm a bit better in the twistier sections. You've all seen my videos before, and if you haven't, you'll know that I do not have the power on the straight. So coming into the twisty sections, I thought I'd try and get away. Didn't manage to, so back up past pits I was thinking, you know what, I regret doing that attack now, I regret trying. And it was just here I thought, you know what, I'll hop the hurdles. Oh my days, I don't know how I didn't go over the handlebars. I didn't realise how knackered I was. My back wheel planted into that hurdle and I was like endoing along, and I thought, this is it, I'm going down. And I just about managed to get me fat backside over the back of the bike to save it. But Nick done a epic turn, then I went to the front and thought I'd try and push on and force an error around these sections again, but I just could not for the life of me get away with them, and I get away from the other boys. And then before I know it, Chopper Oscar is back in the mix. What's he do? Dive bomb me straight up the inside, and then I thought I'll get him back and stick the elbow on him, but he closed the door on me again. I tried my best. I have no idea how Oscar got back in this race for third place. He was like back in 8th. He must have been like a minute down. I remember seeing him. I was like, he's miles away. And then he came from nowhere. He said the caffeine must have hit. And he came past us and he just started sticking the hurt on. And I was like, this is exactly what I don't need. I thought, here's my chance to beat Chopper Oscar. But he made a mistake there, so I was like, take advantage of it, press on this section. He's a roadie, I'm technically more of a mountain biker. I couldn't get away from him. Yet again, he came back to the front. And this was it then. We were coming into the final lap, and the battle for third was on. There was me, Oscar, Nick, and Carl in this group now. And Oscar took it up on the front and decided just to keep going absolutely nuclear on the front. And I just said to myself every time, I was like, every time he surges, you've got to go with it. As soon as he puts the power down, jump. And this is where he put the power down big time coming out of this corner. Absolutely monumental attack. And for a split second, I thought I can't go with it. But I knew Del Boy would have been screaming at me when we got to pits. So just there, he absolutely whacks it 700 watts. My legs are crying right now, screaming at me. And he is giving it some on the front. This is into a headwind as well. And I can see this rider up ahead. So I'm thinking, I'm going to go round to the right. Oscar goes to go round to the left and then sees me and thinks, no, I'll just ride into him again. Thanks, mate. God, I swear he just looks for me to try and chop me. And then before I know it, Nick makes an attack. And I'm like, I've got to go with that. And then Oscar done like that. So he then chops him. It was absolute carnage. The boys were just pinging off the front. It was like one would attack, next guy would attack, and then just here, I could hear Nick's breathing. It was like a rhino, and I thought, is he blowing up? So I went straight past him, jumped on Oscar's wheel, and I was like, I need to be as close as I can to him, because the key point was here. You had to be into this single track section first. So if you made a mistake, the rider behind got held up as well. And Oscar absolutely ripped it up there, managed to hold me off. Everyone knew they needed to be in here first. You can see us coming absolutely flying down. And he makes a mistake there. But because I'm behind, it stops me as well. And then by the time I'd got clipped back in and then you can see how quickly that gap opened up. It's the ripple effect. You needed to be in that single track first. And then to top it off, I think coming down here, I then get a little bit sideways. You can see I've started to close the gap down on him. And then bang, on this route just here, I get it totally wrong, lose all my speed. He gaps me again. And then I think, come on, it's the last 60 seconds of the race. I managed to claw myself back on. And I was like, this is it now. Thankfully, there was a back marker. So I was like, hopefully he's going to slow the pace down a little bit. Unfortunately, got straight out the way and Oscar absolutely whacks it up here. I could not go with this. My heart was jumping out my chest at this point and I did not have the berries. When he accelerated, the wheels fell off and that was it. Oscar took third. I ended up coming away with a 4th place finish to wrap up the season. It's been absolutely wicked making these videos. I've had an absolute blast racing this season. I hope you enjoyed these videos. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.